Hey, what's up guys? Today I'm going to show you how to take input from the user, use that input to filter the sheet, copy and paste the selected data into another sheet, format the table, and create an email with the table in the body using VBA. First thing we're going to do is make a basic user form. I have another video on this, so I'm going to go through quickly here. You can watch the other video if you want. I'll link it in the description. So our form is going to have one text box for the product filter, 5 checkboxes for the country filter and emails, an OK button to run the script, a clear button to clear the inputs and sheets, and a cancel button to close the form. We'll start off by initializing the user form. We'll initialize the product text box by typing product text box.value equals and a blank string. So we're using the .value method here, and we can go over to docs.microsoft.com or just Microsoft Docs and check out the textbox.value method. So we can see here that this determines or specifies the text in the text box, and it's a read or write variant. And as a reminder, we can check out the variant. The variant is a data type for all variables that are not explicitly defined. Now we will initialize the checkboxes. These are really similar to the text box, so we'll do this for each of the countries we have. So it'll be Canada checkbox.value equals false, France checkbox value equals false, Germany checkbox value equals false, Mexico checkbox value equals false, USA checkbox value equals false. And the last thing we'll do in our initialize subroutine is we will set the focus on the product text box. So we'll do product text box.setFocus, and then we'll go back over to Docs and just take a look at the text box.setFocus method. So the setFocus method moves the focus to the specified form, the specified control on the active form, or the specified field on the active datasheet. I think in this case we're using the specified field. Next thing we want to do is write the code for the clear button. What we want this to do is when we hit the clear button, we want all of the values we put into the form to go away and go back to our initialize. We've done this before in other tutorials. So we'll call the user form initialize subroutine. And then we also want, when we hit this button, we want the filters to clear so that we don't need to go back and manually reset those each time. So for this we can use the record macro functionality in Excel. We'll go over here to View, click Record Macro, and we'll clear the filter, stop recording, View, Edit, and then we'll take a look at the code. So here we have ActiveSheet.listObjects, and if we go over to Microsoft Docs, we can see a breakdown of the list objects. So the list objects is a collection of all the list object on the worksheet. Each one represents a table on the worksheet. And then within there's the string financials. This data set I got from Microsoft Docs. So the financial string is the name of this list object or this table. we have list objects, .range, .autofilter, and if we look up autofilter in the docs, we see that the autofilter filters a list object by using an autofilter. We need this for column 2 and column 3, so we'll set the fields equal to 2 and 3 on each of these. So let's add in a button to view the user form. We'll go Developer, Design Mode, Command Button. We'll give the button a name and size it. We'll right-click on the button and hit View Code. Then we'll type filter email user form dot show, and that will show the user form when we click the button. All right, now we need to make the code for the OK button. First, we have a Boolean for our error checking on the product text box. We'll declare that dim a as Boolean. And we're doing this because we don't want some of our code to run if the user made an error. If the user made a typo or left product blank, etc. We don't want the code to run. Next, we'll activate sheet1, sheet1.activate. Then we have an if statement to set the Boolean a. If not is error, application.match, product textbox.value, columns 3, 0, then a equals true, else a equals false, and if. If we take a look at application.match, we can see that this returns the relative position for an item in an array that matches a specified value in a specified order. It takes 3 arguments. The thing you want to find, in our case, the value from product text box, which range or column you want to search on, and then the type. We are just looking for the first one, so we use 0. And just note that if match is unsuccessful, it will return an error. Let's take a look at isError. This returns a Boolean value indicating whether an expression is an error value. If we have an error from match, we know nothing was found. If we put that into isError, it would return true since there is an error. But we want our Boolean to represent when something is found, so we not that result. Confusing, right? Moral of the story, A is going to represent if the product typed into the product text box exists in our table list. Now we want to filter the sheet on the given inputs. We'll create a function to handle this. Just to give you an idea of the rationale here, we create a function because we're going to do the same thing for each of our checkboxes. This gives us the advantage of only having to write it once. And if there's any changes, we only make them in one place instead of 5. Let's call our function filter sheet on country and product. This is going to take 4 different parameters. We'll pass in country value as a string, product value as a string, country as a Boolean, and product as a Boolean. Let's go ahead and call our function. We'll pass in checkbox.caption, and we'll use this for the country filter. We'll pass in textbox.value, which we'll use for our product filter. We'll pass in checkbox.value. We'll use that for our if statement, and we'll pass in the Boolean a, which we will use for our if statement. Quick note here, the variable names change once they are passed into the function. You can always call these what you want. our if statement is going to run when both of our booleans are true. If country equals true and product equals true, then ActiveSheet.listObjects financials range.autofilter on country value, and then the same thing, ActiveSheet list objects range autofilter on product value. What this is saying is if the country's checkbox is checked and the product is in the list, then this will run. We can take a look at the logical operators in VBA and see what our options are. We see here that AND is one of the logical operators. Now that we're done with the filter function, we can go back up to our OK button sub. Next we need to define a function to format the data. This is going to copy and paste the data into a new sheet, format it as a nice table, then send that table in an email. Let's declare a function, format data. We'll pass in country value as a string, product value as a string, country as a boolean, and product as a boolean. In the function call, we'll call format data and pass in Canada checkbox.caption, product textbox.value, Canada checkbox.value, and A. This function is taking the same parameters as before, checkbox caption or country value, the string. We're using this to name and refer to our sheet and table. This is also used in the send email function later. Textbox.value or product value string. This will be used in our send email function that we'll make later. Checkbox.value or country boolean is used in our if statement. A or product boolean, this will be used for our if statement. Next we'll define some variables. Dim row count as long, dim call count as long, dim call letter as string, dim no space as string. We'll use the row count to hold the number of rows. We'll use call count to hold the number of columns. And we'll use call letter to hold the corresponding letter for the last column. The no space variable will be used when we want to make a string with no spaces in it. This will be used for our table select. Next we want to select our data that we're going to copy into a new sheet. We'll type worksheets, sheet1.range for columns A, B, C, J, L, and M. Dot special cells, XL, cell type visible, dot select, selection.copy. So if we take a look at Microsoft Docs for special cells, Excel, cell type visible, we only want to get the filtered rows, not just the hidden ones. The dot copy method copies the specified selection into the clipboard. We'll use the same if statement as before because we only want this to run for valid entries. Next we want to add the sheet, name it, select, and paste data. So we'll type sheets.add after equals sheets, sheets.count. If we look at sheets.count, this will count the sheets. And we put that sheets.add after. This will insert a sheet after the last one in the count. ActiveSheet.name equals country value. For ActiveSheet.name, this will name the sheet the country caption we passed in. We're going to want to give a name of our caption, so it'll be either Canada, France, Germany, etc. Each time this runs, a new country caption variable will be passed. Next we want to select the new sheet in the first cell. We'll do worksheets country value dot select, worksheets country value dot cells 1,1 dot select, worksheets country value dot paste. and that'll paste in the data from the clipboard. Okay, so next what we need to do is make a delete sheet function. We'll start by declaring the function delete sheet, and we'll pass in name as string. So I found this worksheet exists function from Stack Overflow, and we'll use this to check to see if the worksheet exists in the workbook. You want to take this and then copy and paste this into your editor. If worksheet exists, then application.displayAlerts equals false, sheetsName.select, ActiveWindow.SelectedSheets.delete, application display alerts equals true. And then you end the if statement. Set alerts false because Excel will try to prompt you, are you sure you want to delete? Then we'll select the sheet based on name, delete the sheet, and reset the alerts. At this point, we need to go back to our clear button sub so that we don't need to delete these sheets manually each time. We'll call the delete sheet function on each one of the checkboxes. Call delete sheet, and then we'll pass in the caption. Next, we want to get the ranges for the row count and the column count, and then we'll set up the column letter. So row count equals worksheet function dot count A, range from A to A. So for count A, if we take a look at Microsoft Docs, this will count the number of cells that are not empty and the values within the list of arguments. Call count equals ActiveSheet.cells 1 columns.count.end Excel to left .column. So I got this from Stack Overflow. This is just going to count the number of columns. Call letter equals split cells 1 call count dot address money symbol 1. What we want to do is convert the column count to a letter to use in the range later. We're using the dot address method. The dot address method will return the full address of the referenced cell. The cell we're referencing is the first row, last column in the column count, and we'll get the address there. We'll use the split function to split off the money symbols from that. So the split function returns a zero-based array containing a specific number of substrings. The first argument is the expression. The second argument is the delimiter, the money symbol in our case. And we are assigning to column letter the first item in that array, which is the letter of the column. Let's say the people who want to see this table want things in a specific order. So we need to move some of the columns around. This is a perfect example of where we could use a function. We'll just do a series of select, copy, select, paste, and then we'll clear the unneeded column. So let's define a function, and we'll call it move columns. We'll pass 3 strings into this function. The first string will be for the sheet name, the second string will be for the from column, and the third string will be for the to column. We'll type worksheets, sheet name, dot range, from column, dot select, selection, dot copy, worksheets, sheet name, dot range, to column, dot select, worksheets, sheet name, dot paste. Let's call our function move columns, We'll pass in country value, the range for column F, and the range for column G. Calling the function again, we'll pass in country value, the range for column A, and the range for column F. Let's call our function again, and we'll pass in country value, the range for column G, and the range for column A. The next thing we need to do is clear the unneeded column. Worksheets, country value, range on column G, .select, selection.clear. The next thing we want to do is auto-fit our data. So to get the code for this, you can just hit record macro, select all the cells, and hit auto-fit width. Now we can go back in and view the macro, and we can see the code. So we'll copy and paste this and put it into our format data function. And then we'll want to substitute in the range. Next, we want to make our table look nice. So to get the code for creating a table, we'll do the same thing. We'll record a macro. Go in, hit record macro, select all, and then hit Control-T, stop recording, view macro. Now we can look at the code. So when we're looking at this code, we want to substitute in our range. So let's keep this first string. We'll do range A1 and column letter and row count .select. Then we'll change the range down here in the list objects. This will have the money symbol in it, so we'll have money A, money 1, colon money in the first string, and column letter and row count. Then we want to name this list object or this table, but we want this name to change each time this is run. So what we'll do is we'll make a string with no spaces, because when I tried this earlier, the spaces were kind of throwing everything off. So we'll use that string country value and we'll just strip out all the spaces. For this, I found a function on Stack Overflow, which removes white space, and I modified it a little bit to fit my needs here. We'll just copy and paste that into the editor. So this takes a string, and then it will trim the string, which takes white space off the ends, and then it'll have a do while loop and use the replace function to replace all of the spaces with just nothing. So then there will be no space in there. And then it's going to return that string back. So when we call this function, we're going to assign that to no space. So this will just be our country value string with no spaces in it. So we'll replace the name of the list object or the table with no space. And we'll do that also in the range select. Next thing we'll do is we'll select and style the table. We'll do the same thing before, where we record the macro and look at the code. So here we have active sheet list objects, and then we'll put in our no space variable there. That's referring to the table, and then we'll change the table style there. So now we need to make the function that's going to create the email with the table in it. And for this, I found a page by Ron De Bruin, which was really helpful. And I kind of took his example and modified it a little bit. So for the send email function, I want to pass in the sheet name as a string, the R as a long for the row count, C as a string for the column letter, and product as a string for the product value. So for the sheet name, we pass that in so that we can refer to our sheet. And we're also going to use the sheet name for our to email address. For the row count, or R variable, we're going to use that to handle the dynamic ranges on the row. So if we had a different number of rows, which actually happens in our example, the row count is going to handle that. And then we're passing in C, and that's going to be used for dynamic ranges on the columns. We actually don't really have that going on here, but I just did it anyway just so that we have it. And then we're passing in product value. That's going to be used in the subject line of our email. So now let's declare some variables. Dim, no space, as string. We're going to use this for the email address. This is just our caption, but for email addresses, there's typically no spaces in there, so it's kind of handy that we have that. Dim, email body as string. This is going to hold the HTML code for our message before the table. Dim, email signature as string. This is going to hold the HTML string for the message after the table. Dim, RNG as range. This is going to be used to select the table we want to convert to HTML. Dim, out app as object. This is going to be used for creating an instance of the application object. Dim, out mail as object. This will be used to create an instance of the mail object. Now getting into the function, we'll run the remove white space function again. I guess I could have just passed this in from before, but we'll just run the function again. Next, let's create some HTML to put before the table. You can get creative here and have an entire HTML file that you bring in and use. One thing that I've done in the past is you can actually just create an email in Outlook, format it the way you want it, send it to yourself, and then inspect the page, inspect the HTML on the page, and copy and paste that into an HTML file, and then you can link to the HTML file in your code here. For now, we'll just keep it simple and just type some simple HTML in here. So we'll do an HTML tag, salutations, and then a paragraph tag. Here are the requested financial reports. We'll do the same thing for the email signature. We'll have a HTML tab. We'll do a break. Warm regards, another break. And then 2 paragraph tags, and we'll sign it as Jim. This is just some basic HTML. If you don't really know HTML, you can check out W3 Schools. They're a really good resource for HTML and actually a lot of other languages. Well, HTML is not really a language, but you know what I mean. Okay, next we need to initialize the range. So we do this by typing set RNG equal nothing. And we'll do some basic error checking here. On error, resume next. I actually didn't really know what this was, so I had to look it up. If we go to docs, the on error statement is used in unstructured error handling and can be used instead of structured exception handling. So this seems kind of like a try-catch thing to me here. If there's an error, just go to the next line, that kind of thing. Next, we'll set up our range. Set RNG equal sheets, sheet name, dot range, A1, and the column, and the row, dot special cells, Excel type visible. So basically, this is just making our range the table that we have in our sheet here. Next, we'll use onError go to 0. I didn't really know what this was either, so let's go over to Docs real quick. So onError go to 0, this disables error handler in the current procedure and resets it to nothing. Next thing we have is this if statement. This is just here if we happen to pass nothing in for the range. So this is just going to give us a pop-up message. The selection is not a range or the sheet is protected. So this came from Ron's code and I just left it in here just to give us a heads up if the range has nothing in it. Okay, next thing we got to do is we want to disable the enable events and disable the screen updating. To do that, we're going to do a with statement on application. So with application dot enable events equals false dot screen updating equals false. If we take a look at application enable events, this says that there are many different types of events in Excel VBA. We are going to turn these off by setting this to false. Let's check out screen updating. And Microsoft Docs says that by turning this off, this should make the macro run faster. So you're not actually going to see all of the operations happening. They'll just kind of happen in the background. And hopefully that'll save us some time when the macro is running. Next, let's initialize the Outlook objects. We'll initialize the out app object and type set out app equals create object Outlook application. If we look at Microsoft Docs, we can see that this sets the object variable to the Outlook application object, which is the highest level object in the Outlook object model. That's fancy. All automation code must first define an Outlook application object to be able to access any other Outlook objects. So in order for us to do anything here for Outlook, we kind of need this out app object, this first Outlook application object. Next, let's initialize the outmail variable. We'll do that by setting it equal to outapp.createItem. And this is just going to be an object value that represents the new Outlook item. Now let's create the email. We'll do another error statement on error resume next. We'll have a with statement with outmail .to, and for this we want to create the email address that we're going to send it to. So we're going to use that no space string and at and no space again .com. So if we're doing this on Canada, it'll say something like canada@canada.com. So that was kind of the rationale by passing that string in for each of these. If it needs to go to Canada or if it needs to go to Mexico, it will change the email address as such. So that's why I wanted to pass that variable in. CC, we'll leave this blank. BCC, you can just put whatever you want. You can put United States in here. United States at unitedstates.com. Not sure if that's real. Next, we'll do the subject. We'll type financial reports for and product. So that'll be the information that we got from the product text box. That's just going to kind of propagate through to here. And this, I just wanted to illustrate that you can pass that stuff through, and now you can put that in your subject line, and this will change for each product that we select in the form. Let's do HTML body. So for this, let's use email body, the HTML string from before. Now we need to use a function to operate on our table from the range. So for this, we're going to use a function from that same guy, Ron de Bruin. Let's take a look at the range to HTML function. So Ron's function is going to create a temporary file in the environment variables. Then it's going to copy the range and make a new temp workbook. So it's just going to take the table that we have, copy it, paste it into a new workbook. Then it's going to take that workbook and save it as a temporary HTML file. So that's going to generate some HTML code that will look like our table. Next, we put the HTML into a range to be returned. And then the code will close and delete the temporary workbook, and then close and delete the temporary HTML file. And now we're back in our function here, the send email function, and we'll add in the email signature HTML. The next thing we can do is display or send. If you put .send, it will automatically just send this email. So I'm going to leave this as .display. So what this will do is just pop up the email and you can review it before you send it off. Let's end our with statement and then end the error checking. All right, next thing we want to do is set back true the enable events and the screen updating. So we'll do that with application dot enable events equals true dot screen updating equals true and with, and then we'll set outmail equal nothing, set out-app equal nothing. And now we're back in the format data sub. We'll end the if statement and change our sheet back to sheet 1. So we want to change back from sheet 1 because in this function we've kind of created a new sheet and all of the operations are happening in this one sheet, and we want to go back so that we can get more data for the next checkbox and go create another sheet with the next function. So you got to remember to go back to sheet 1. So that's basically it. We'll call all of these. The calls are going to look the same for pretty much each one of these. That's the beauty behind the functions here. So we'll call filter sheet for France. We'll call format data for France, filter sheet for Germany, format data for Germany. We'll call filter sheet for Mexico. We'll call format data for Mexico. And then we'll call filter sheet for United States. But we have to remember when we made the checkbox for United States, we didn't use the full United States of America. So when we pass the caption in, we have to add that of America to the end. So on the filter sheet, this first parameter that we're passing in, USA checkbox.caption and space of America, then we'll call format data. Same thing here. The first parameter going in, we need to put USA checkbox.caption and space of America. The last thing we need to do is put the code for our cancel button. We'll use the unload me statement that we did in one of our previous videos. All right, that's it for this video. Catch you on the next one.